Pete Lee is a role-playing game designer. He makes miniatures, he paints and sculpts them. His projects have included Dungeons & Dragons miniatures and other role-playing products. He designed all the miniatures for Lords of Waterdeep and also Dungeon Command.
So, Lords of Waterdeep is a worker placement kind of game, and the idea behind it is that there are a series of resource mines. For example, there might be a forest that produces wood, or a quarry that produces ore, and players in turn have a number of workers, whether it be farmers or miners or woodsmen, who can go to these locations and extract the resource. The two types of cards that we see most often in Lords of Waterdeep is the quest cards and the intrigue cards. Quest cards are basically a way to convert these resources you've been collecting with your workers into points. And intrigue cards change the balance of the game with some one-time event, almost always in favor of the person playing it.
Intrigue cards are much more fun, and it's really kind of an interesting part of the game because you can really switch it around. Say you're losing, you have a smuggler card, and it can take so many points away from somebody or everyone, and you can play that down, and next thing you know, you're like ahead of the game because you took everyone else's points. So I think intrigue cards are really cool in that aspect. Intrigue cards are another kind of a resource. You have to put a worker down in actually the harbor, the Waterdeep harbor, to play an intrigue card. So that's, to play an intrigue card, you have to actually stop taking resources. You can play them by placing one of your workers on the Waterdeep docks, but since you do that, you only get 2 other workers to take resources, say like wood or stone or whatever. So you have to make sure you really want to split up your workers and play an intrigue card. If you're low on resources, that's not a good thing to do. But if you're pretty, ballsy, you're like, okay, I'm losing, but I'll just go with the docks and play a card. Maybe it'll favor me. So, it's all about how you use your workers and how you plan out, your game. Another mechanic is building actual buildings in the game. They're like the resource tiles, like the harbor or the lumber yard, etc. But they're your places. So if you spent the resources to build them, you can get benefits from other people using your building. So you make an inn, and then somebody uses that inn to benefit themselves. But since you built it, you get a little bit of money. So building buildings is actually a big part of winning the game later. If you have a bunch of buildings and people use it, you actually don't have to work so hard because you're getting money every turn. The main difference in mechanics between Dungeon Command and Lords of Waterdeep, and Pete, when he made Dungeon Command, it was more of a dungeon crawler game like D&D, where you went into a dungeon and you had character cards like Lords of Waterdeep, but your main goal was to defeat enemies and build up your character. Whereas in Lords of Waterdeep, your character's still important, but you're kind of building up kingdom, I guess it would be, for that person. You have buildings and resources, and your main point in the game is not to defeat any enemies, it's to become like the richest person or the most successful person in the game. Another mechanic in Pete's games that actually both games, both Dungeon Command and Lords of Waterdeep, share is your character having a unique ability. You're not just some faceless nobody. There's a deck of character cards, and you pick one, and that person has a certain advantage. Some are better at building, some are better at resource gathering, some are better at intrigue. It all depends on what kind of game you want to play as the character you pick. And unlike Dungeon Command, you're not really, as I said, you're a lord, so you're not really going on adventures yourself, but there are actual adventures in the game that you use influence points on to recruit and send them on quests, and those quests can give you rewards as gold or resources and stuff like that. So basically, to sum up, Lords of Waterdeep mechanics, it's all about worker placement and resource management mechanics that they can change game to game depending on how you play. There's never really a stale game. People build different buildings, or people go after different tactics to take other people down. It'll change your game every time you play it. It's random. So I think that's a real interesting part of Lords of Waterdeep, that it's never the same, no matter how many times you play it.